Ken Trahan with Lenny Vangilder. It's our First NBC Bank weekend preview, brought to you by First NBC Bank with 31 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNola.com. The New Orleans Saints are back in action. Huge game against the San Francisco 49ers. It's Saints Hall of Fame weekend, and a lot of alumni will be in town. Leroy Glover being inducted into the Saints Hall of Fame this weekend. Pete Finney gets the Joe Gimelli Florida Lee Award, and then there's the game. And the 49ers came in here and beat the Saints last year, knocked them out in the playoffs, as you know, in 2011. So you can say the Saints owe them one, but Lenny, this is going to be tough. It's a very physical team. It's a very good defense, and the Saints offense will be really challenged.
Yeah, what you saw last week offensively with 625 yards, 242 on the ground, maybe not so much here the next few games with some of these defenses they're going to face, beginning with a very good San Francisco defense. You know, it's interesting. The numbers between the 49ers and the Saints defensively are very similar, almost down to the yard. But obviously the 49ers have a much better reputation defensively because of what they've done in other years, a year ago, 2 years ago, and the Saints have kind of the new kids on the block with putting up solid numbers on the defensive end. You know, that said, you know, what Rob Ryan's defense did against the Cowboys was outstanding. They're going to need a similar type effort against Colin Kaepernick, you know, and that read option offense, although obviously I think you're seeing less and less of the quarterback keeping the ball in that read option for a number of reasons. One, you've got teams that have managed to figure out how to scheme against that. And secondly is they just don't want to put their quarterbacks at risk and have them out there on an island basically where they can get hit and you lose them. We see so many teams that are struggling now because they've lost their quarterbacks, most notably Green Bay. You know, you lose your quarterback out there, it's a different story. We can only hope and pray that doesn't happen to number 9.
No joke. And San Francisco's offense, very, very pedestrian. They just don't throw the ball that well. And Vernon Davis banged up, so who knows? I think the Saints need to play the run and concentrate on shutting that down, and then they'll be in good shape. But this could be a game that's decided by a field goal. With that in mind, Garrett Hartley has really struggled. They brought in a bunch of kickers, but then they patted him on the back and said, "You're our man." He's got to come through.
Yeah, vote of confidence. That's you hear that in sports. That's never necessarily a good thing. But you're right. He's got to be. And I think what you end up with is you've got a guy who's been there for several years now, has been in clutch situations. The only exception that I can think of him not delivering in a clutch situation was that overtime kick he missed in 2010 against Atlanta. The only chance he really had to win a game where he failed to win a game. One other one in 2009 against Tampa Bay, and what was really not a significant game. But you know, for the most part, he has been the guy that has delivered when you've needed him to do so. And Sean Payton, maybe to a fault, can be a loyal guy. He's going to stick with his guys, and I think he's going to give him one more shot here.
LSU and Tulane football are off this week. We'll talk about them next week. Of course, the New Orleans Pelicans coming off of a lousy road trip in which they lost all 3 games on the West Coast. And it wasn't just that they lost. It's how they lost. Losing at Phoenix was one thing. They've been swept by Phoenix in 2 games, who last year had a worse record than they did. Jeff Hornacek's doing a good job, and they've made some moves to improve their team. Then they went into Staples Center and just played a horrendous game against a mediocre team in the Lakers, got blown out from the get-go, and then talked about how they had no energy. Whose fault is that? And then, of course, in Utah, against a winless team, they blew a 16-point second-half lead and gave up 38 in the fourth quarter to a team that, frankly, isn't any good. So you have to be a bit concerned about this. We keep hearing about young team, youngest team in the league. It's going to take time. Ryan Anderson's hurt. I get all of that. But they've had a soft early schedule, Lenny, and they're 3-6.
Yeah, that is concerning. You would have liked to have seen them at least come away with the win in Utah to come back home, a little momentum, call it what you will. But when you've got a 16-point lead in the third quarter, no matter whether you're young, old, or somewhere in between, you've got to have the instincts to be able to close that game out. Give Utah credit. That was a hungry team that obviously had not won a game the entire year going in. Hearing talk of the old days, and you and I remember of the New Orleans Jazz. That was the last time a Jazz team had started this poorly. I remember Pistol Pete hitting that shot from the corner to win the first ever game in franchise history.
At the auditorium.
Yeah, I remember seeing it. But and that was a struggle that year too. But hopefully we won't see that kind of performance out of a New Orleans team the rest of the way. A chance to start righting things. A Philadelphia team coming to town on Saturday night that has been up and down. They've beat some good teams. They've lost to some not so good teams. So it's you don't know what you're going to get out of Philadelphia. They're coming off an overtime win over Houston on Wednesday night.
Well, I mean, again, it's a 3-game homestand against 3 teams that you can beat. Philadelphia coming in, Utah in a rematch, And then you get on the back end Cleveland, who's 3-5, 3-6. So you got to take advantage. Again, as I wrote before the season, the early schedule was soft, and you had to get off to a good start because after that stretch of the 3 home games, it gets a lot tougher, starting with San Antonio. So they have got to improve measurably, in particular on the defensive end, where they simply don't defend, and they didn't defend last year.
No, and one of the things that Monty Williams talked about from day one this year when he met the media at Media Day before camp began is got to be a better defensive team in the fourth quarter. And that was one of the things that he was looking at in camp during the offseason and things like that. 38 on Wednesday night against Utah, classic example as to that's still got to be addressed.
In the fourth quarter, when you're supposed to be bearing down defensively, that's game time, if you will, in the regular season of the NBA, that just won't play. And they give up 99 a game, and that's not going to win in the NBA either, so stay tuned where they are concerned. Of course, with high school football, the state playoffs getting underway this weekend, 9 different classes. Not everyone's playing, but you got 99 games. Go find one that you like and go watch a game and follow along on Ken Trahan's original Prep Football Report, 6:05 to midnight, full coverage of everything around the state in conjunction with SportsNola.com, where we update the scoreboard all night long, and you can watch the results all night long as they're updated. And you can watch us online live, too, at SportsNola.com. And we're on 11 radio stations across the state, including on WGSO 990 AM locally. So let the system begin, and then let the critics weigh in.
Yeah, we've got a full video preview that you may have already seen in terms of breaking it all down bracket by bracket. A lot to get into. So, stay with us. It's going to be intriguing. It's certainly not the perfect system, as we've talked about ad nauseum, but it is the system we're facing in 2013.
Well, we look forward to it. We'll see what happens, and we'll be more interested as it gets into week 2 and beyond, I'm quite sure. Lenny, as always, a pleasure. Thanks for the visit.
Yeah, let's give them a couple of reminders before we go about what's coming up on WHNO TV 20. A huge one on Saturday in Hammond, and we've got it live for you on Channel 20. Southeastern and Sam Houston State. Southeastern playing for the Southland Conference title. And, of course, our regular programming Monday through Friday, 5 to 7 p.m. All of your favorite sports shows, including this guy and his panel on Sports NOLA TV, Monday nights at 6.
All right, Lenny, thank you very much. That's our First NBC Bank weekend preview brought to you by First NBC Bank with 31 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNola.com. For Lenny, I'm Kenny. Have a great weekend, and God bless.